look, and this is normal for a lot of people that maybe weren't raised in the perfect family or the perfect situation. I mean, people that come from broken homes, maybe just people that maybe didn't have as much education or they didn't come. So what I love about what you're talking about is that you turn that though into fuel. And I've been telling people this for a long, long time is that, man, you could be a victim or you can be a victor. And a lot of people, they ruin their lives being the victim of their circumstances.
Absolutely.
And they never quite ever reach any sort of level of success because they're such a victim. Now, even though, because I relate a lot to what you're talking about, Peter, because I felt like an uneducated little Mexican kid. I was never that smart. I probably, well, I do have a lower IQ than most. And so that really, as a young man going into business, I would sit down with a tall, educated white guy, and I would be completely intimidated by this person. And it stunted my growth in those early years, I believe. And once I figured out that I was just as smart as anybody else, because I put in the time, the effort, the study time, the focus, the discipline, the work ethic. And once I started to believe in myself, everything turned around. And so it's very inspiring that you say that. And then what you just said, to have that full life, is when you really start shedding those limiting beliefs and start shedding that younger, self, is when you really started to get into the real dream that you're living today. And I think it really comes down to having it all. And that's that mental, spiritual, financial, when you put it all together, that's what you're achieving today. So is any of that make sense to you?
Oh, completely, because I live in that cycle. Even though I had achieved incredible financial success, I still lived in a state of survival. I still live in that, fight and flight mode. I still live in high alert. I still live like if I was a broken 10-year-old little boy waiting for something bad to happen. I still carry all that negative energy and all that negative trauma, because what happens to many immigrant children, okay, and to many children of adverse circumstances, is that we carry the trauma of our parents, we carry the trauma of our ancestors, we carry our trauma of people, of our social conditioning, and until we get rid of that, we are never going to be able to function to our full potential. We have to address that. Every single individual operates from what I call the 5 pillars: the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and financial. Okay. And when you operate from those 5 pillars, when they're all balanced and in synchronicity, when they're operating together, you're operating from a state of flow. You become present and available here and in the now, and you're able to see your life with clarity and possibilities. You have completely exit that state of survival. You're no longer time traveling between the past and the future. You're operating from a single state of consciousness. When you're able to do that, your life is magical. Your life is magical. There's nothing that you can't do. There's nothing that you cannot achieve, because everything's possible. You live a full and abundant life.
That's so cool, man. Why did you start a podcast? What motivated you to do that? Because I mean, you didn't have to do it. I mean, you're financially free. It's not like you're doing it because it's making you rich or anything like that. I mean, why'd you do it?
Well, I started to have a podcast. First of all, I've been sober from alcoholism for 20, almost 23 years. Okay. And I really realized that the mental health, addiction, were issues that permeated in my family. Okay. There are issues that really help many of my family members back from becoming the best version of themselves. So I got sober, and then I got sober to a program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which obviously, hence the words anonymous, right? A lot of those stories stay in the rooms. They're not shared. They die in those rooms. And I really thought, well, that's really kind of stupid. We have an issue that permeates in many communities, in many families across the world. Okay, across the world, across any ethnicity, across any race, any color, any creed, right? So why not share those stories? So I started the podcast as a platform to bring awareness to addiction and recovery and mental health, right? And my podcast really took off. We started having some incredible thought leaders from across the world, and right in the midst of that, we shifted the mindset of not just talking about addiction and recovery, but actually talking about issues that permeate in everybody's community, in everybody's home, at every single level. Right in the midst of COVID, so, people don't want to talk about addiction and recovery. They want to talk about how to pivot, how to transform, how to change, how to survive, bottom line is, Daniel, I'm more than addiction. I'm more than recovery. I'm more than mental health. I am a father. I'm a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a philanthropist. I'm an author. I'm a member of my community. I want to be able to give to people as much as I have received. So that's the reason I started the podcast. And awesome. As a result of that, we have had some incredible guests that share stories, but they're solution-based stories.
Right. Right. And that's, I think most of us that start a podcast, there's something inside of us that we want to bring out these great stories. And I love what I do and I get to do because I love meeting people like you, man. I love meeting new people that have great stories of, because I think for some reason there's this thought in the world that, successful people, they just wake up and they're just successful. And it really, and I think it's just the movies or what, you watch a movie and in 2 hours, the guy goes from, down and out to successful in 2 hours. And we think that that's the way, and that's not the way that real life works. And to hear you talk about your past and what you've went through and the struggles and the challenges, and then to see that after all said and done, you've kind of came to a point where you're starting to live the life that God was meant for you to live. Absolutely. That's exciting. That's exciting. That is the whole, that's the journey of life. And that's fun to know. And you said follow, I heard you say on your Instagram, follow your dreams, but stay awake. What does that mean to you? What does that mean?
Well, it's a very simple code. It's as simple as all of us are dreamers, right? All of us are dreamers, but in order for us to be able to execute on the dream, we have to be awake. We have to be awake. We have to be present and available. We have to be able to show what the possibilities are and then be able to share our successes and our failures. Life is not just about success. You just said it. I was a success overnight. It just took me 50 years to get here. Okay. So yeah, the success happens overnight. It is one pivotal moment that people notice you. You have arrived in sense of the word. But the reality is that it takes you 50 years or 60 years or 40 years or whatever number of years to be able to arrive to that particular point in life. People don't see all the grinding that goes in the background. We don't, we filter and edit our stories, but our lives, we can't filter. It doesn't matter how much we try to filter them. Life is life, and it's going to hit you in the face, and it's going to smack you. It's going to throw you around, but it is up to you to be able to get up and face your challenges and adversities with great strength and hope. And when you do that, the journey is much more easier. But that's why it's so important, Daniel, that we operate from a state of abundance, that we operate from a state of being a state of flow, from not operating, because the average individual, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way, the average individual that does not take care of themselves, okay, is constantly operating from a state of survival, because that's the way we are made to be. I was having a conversation where I created a movement called Excelente, which is a movement to identify, okay, inspire, educate, transform, and empower 100 million people by December 31st, 2028. And we do that by creating different platforms where we share our stories. But we share our stories not because our stories are unique. We share our stories in service. Our stories, your story, my stories, able to allow someone else to hear their stories in our stories. And it gives them permission to talk about it. Okay. When you start talking about it and you create a domino effect, you begin to find solutions to problems that have permeated in your communities, in your household. If you don't talk about the elephant in the room is controlling that fucking room. okay? And you want to be the one controlling the room. When you take the power from the elephant, you are in power. When you are in power, you have possibilities, you have clarity, and you are able to make decisions for yourself and for your family and for your community.
Thank you for watching our short clips on Alonzo Academy. If you'd like to watch the next short clip, click here. If you'd like to watch the entire podcast, click here.